The dynamic between Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White is very interesting because clearly it's a relationship with a basis of respect. I mean, when Stephanie White was hired, Clark was thrilled, super excited. And coach said all the right things about coming in and coaching the Fever and coaching Caitlin Clark. Then fairly early in the season, I would say there was a bit of a philosophical divide, but it never got to be completely worked out, right? And it wasn't as if they were at odds, but I noticed when they would talk about things. And for instance, when Caitlin Clark had come back from one of her injuries.
And all right, so get this. Live on national television, Caitlin Clark just dropped some absolutely cutting words that instantly sent massive shockwaves rippling through the entire league. She was talking about her role, especially after coming back from an injury, and she acknowledged what coach Stephanie White had been telling her, the need to be a better screener, to play off ball more. She nodded to those coaching points, but then, almost immediately, with this undeniable, almost defiant edge in her voice, she boldly, unequivocally reiterated her absolute conviction. She stated straight up, "I'm at my best with the ball in my hands." Now, this wasn't just some casual statement of fact. What we heard was a clear, unambiguous challenge, a direct counterpoint, really, to the exact coaching philosophy that her own head coach was actively presenting. The message was unmistakable, broadcast for every single person watching to hear, and it immediately created this palpable, undeniable tension that threatened to completely unravel their entire dynamic before it even had a real chance to begin. The silence that seemed to follow her declaration was deafening, signaling a deep, undeniable philosophical divide laid bare for the whole world to witness.
And it wasn't as if they were at odds, but I noticed when they would talk about things. And for instance, when Caitlin Clark had come back from one of her injuries and Ari McDonald was there and they were asking about playing together, and Clark referenced some of the talking points Stephanie White has made, like being a better screener, about playing off ball, but then she, reiterated that she's at the best with the ball in her hands. And that reminded me of when I was there for the Liberty game, the first Liberty game that Clark got hurt and not the one that she came back and exploded in. And before that game, there was a little bit of a hint of,
the initial hiring of Stephanie White for the Fever had actually been met with incredible enthusiasm, especially from Clark herself, who was reportedly absolutely thrilled about the pick. White came in saying all the right things, promising to coach the Fever with passion and, crucially, to fully embrace her superstar player. She sounded like the perfect fit. Yet, here's what's crazy. That honeymoon period was shockingly, incredibly short-lived, dissolving fairly early in the season. Almost before anyone could blink, a distinct philosophical chasm emerged between the two. We're talking about a fundamental disagreement, a core difference in opinion about how the team, and even more specifically, how Caitlin Clark herself should ideally operate on the court. It wasn't an open feud, not at first, but this unrest, simmering tension was clearly bubbling just beneath the surface, a subtle crack in the very foundation of their partnership that dedicated fans, let me tell you, quickly picked up on. The early respect was absolutely there. It was undeniable. But those cracks started appearing almost immediately, hinting at much deeper, more complex issues that were clearly on the horizon.
Fans took that and turned it into Stephanie White will destroy Caitlin Clark and all that. We never got a chance to see them completely gel. When Clark had come back, even when she was playing hobbled before the groin injury that ultimately ended her season when the ankle injury compounded it, the Fever were rolling. They had won a couple of games in a row there, but not only just did they win them, they looked like a machine. And that was with Clark struggling to shoot because she was obviously hobbled with injuries. But then when the Fever go on and they win without Caitlin Clark, and clearly Stephanie White proves she's a hell of a coach, and the rest of the team steps up, Clark.
Now, the very first significant public manifestation of this growing divide happened when Clark, still in the process of recovering from an injury, was directly questioned about her role, particularly alongside her teammate Erica Wheeler. She did pay lip service, she gave the expected answers, acknowledging White's directives about playing off ball and the importance of improving as a screener. But then, in that moment, The real Caitlin Clark, the fiercely competitive, self-assured player, truly emerged. She doubled down on her personal philosophy, asserting with unwavering confidence that her optimal performance, her absolute best, came when she had the ball firmly in her hands, driving the offense, dictating the tempo, being the primary orchestrator. This wasn't merely a casual preference. It was a firm, definitive declaration of her identity as a player, seemingly at complete odds with the precise team strategy that White was actively attempting to implement. It honestly felt less like an adaptation, less like a player accepting a new role, and much more like a quiet, yet very public, rejection of the path her coach was setting out for her.
They win without Caitlin Clark, and clearly Stephanie White proves she's a hell of a coach, and the rest of the team steps up. Clark celebrated in that moment. And I know for a fact that they have a good relationship, right? So it's just intriguing because they never got a chance to fully flesh out their on-court relationship. They have a great off-court relationship, and so much has been made of their relationship since without us having a chance to actually see the substance. And then when Stephanie White says anything, it gets run with, like when she had talked about how important Kelsey Mitchell was to the team. I don't even forget.
And here's what's interesting. This public exchange that we just talked about actually echoed an even earlier, perhaps more subtle, confrontation that happened before a pivotal game against the Liberty. White had once again stressed the importance of Clark playing off the ball, framing it as a way to give her a much-needed break and, critically, to help the team's overall offensive flow. It sounded logical, right? But Clark's response, while undoubtedly polite, still carried that similar subtle undertone of resistance. She acknowledged the potential benefits, sure, a brief respite, some assistance for the team. But she very quickly pivoted right back to her deeply held belief that she is at her absolute best and most impactful when she's orchestrating the offense with the ball firmly in her control. At that point, it became crystal clear that this wasn't just a simple tactical debate or a difference of opinion on one play. No, this was a profound clash of fundamental basketball philosophies, a genuine power struggle that was unmistakably brewing beneath the surface, threatening to boil over at any moment.
And then when Stephanie White says anything, it gets run with, like when she had talked about how important Kelsey Mitchell was to the team. I don't even forget the exact comments, but it was the most innocent comment ever, especially when they're trying to re-sign Kelsey Mitchell in free agency. But it's like, wow, she didn't say Caitlin Clark was the be-all, end-all of everything all the time, and therefore she, hates her. But regardless, Stephanie White was on with Sue Bird on her Bird's Eye View podcast and specifically talked about Caitlin Clark and said some things that I think fans will like to hear, especially coming from her.
How important was it to forge that relationship with her?
Naturally, fans in the media, as they always do, immediately seized upon these nuanced exchanges, blowing them up, if we're being honest, into a full-blown, dramatic narrative of conflict. That philosophical divide, the one we've been talking about, was quickly sensationalized, with headlines screaming, suggesting that Stephanie White was actively trying to destroy Caitlin Clark's game, or, even worse, stifle her absolutely unique generational talent. The public perception of the team rapidly shifted, moving away from seeing them as a cohesive unit and instead viewing them as an organization fraught with deep internal tension. Every single comment, every subtle gesture from either side, was meticulously analyzed under a microscope, exacerbating the already immense pressure on both the coach and her star player. The glaring lack of any clear public resolution only poured more fuel on the fire, turning what might have been minor, everyday disagreements into perceived major power struggles, all playing out in the unforgiving, hyper-scrutinized spotlight of national attention.
That I think fans will like to hear, especially coming from her.
How important was it to forge that relationship with her for all the reasons?
I mean, really important. I'd had just a little bit of a relationship with Caitlin from calling her games a number of times, when she was in college, but it was very important. Look, she's obviously the centerpiece of everything that we do. And most importantly for me was just connecting and building trust. I don't know how she does what she does and handles it so gracefully. I'm not sure reassure, myself as a.
Finally, Stephanie White had her much-anticipated moment to directly address all this swirling speculation, making an appearance on Sue Bird's incredibly popular Bird's Eye View podcast. And let me tell you, White didn't back down for a second. This was her snap, her definitive response. Not a shouting match, not a heated argument, but a firm, unwavering, articulate declaration of her coaching philosophy that directly countered all the perceived insults and criticisms of her methods. She stressed, and I mean really stressed, the paramount importance of forging a deep, trusting relationship with Clark, not just acknowledging her as a superstar, but, crucially, seeing her as a player who absolutely needed to be challenged and molded to reach her full potential. White's words were a crystal-clear, strategic response, a deliberate move to assert her authority and vision amidst all the intense public scrutiny, meticulously laying down her uncompromising coaching tenets for everyone to understand.